Welcome back, Dread Tales. Tonight we begin a two-part descent into the unsettling world of folklore and scary tales. This is part one of our series where we uncover the origins of these haunting tales and the real-world anxieties they reflect. Are you ready to face the shadows? Let's begin. We ever stopped mid-story and asked yourself why so many of the comforting tales told to children are crawling with wolves that eat grandmothers, witches that fatten kids, and ghosts that weep for the dead? What if the stories we cherish at bedtime were never meant to soothe us, but to warn us? Tonight, we descend into the dark history of folklore and scary tales to uncover the human fears, real dangers, and social tensions that forged them. Have your childhood favorites ready to be turned upside down? Many of the world's most famous stories began as raw survival guides wrapped in nightmare packaging, tales sharpened by famine, plague, war, and the need to keep a community in line. Once you glimpse the original edges, you may never hear those stories the same way again. So what hidden truths lurk behind our most familiar monsters? From ancient campfire myths whispered against the dark to modern digital legends that spread in seconds, we'll trace how cultures have used fear, strategically, symbolically, sometimes cruelly, to teach, control, and remember. Settle in, dim the lights, and listen closely. The past is speaking, and it has teeth. Folklore was never just entertainment. It was a social toolkit, a way elders taught children, communities enforced rules, and groups defined who belonged and who did not. Consider how many classic tales hinge on obedience. A girl is told, "Do not leave the path." She strays. She meets a predator. The lesson? Boundaries protect. Parents in pre-industrial villages didn't have GPS trackers. They had stories. Little Red Riding Hood may read like fantasy, but beneath the red hood beats a message about listening, stranger danger, and the wild unpredictability of the woods. Hansel and Gretel carries the scar tissue of famine. When food failed, desperate families faced unthinkable choices. The candy house glitters with impossible plenty, but inside waits devouring hunger in human form. The tale remembers the brutal economics of scarcity and the fear that those sworn to care for you might abandon you to survive. In Slavic lands, Baba Yaga, bone-legged witch, forest dweller, ambiguous helper or destroyer, patrolled the threshold between civilization and the untamed wild. Children learned caution, adults whispered social tensions, hospitality, reciprocity, punishment for greed. Fear also policed morality. Tales of demons that punished liars, river spirits that drowned the disobedient, or ghosts that stalked the cruel, helped reinforce codes without formal institutions. Long before most listeners could read scripture or law, the story was the law. Psychologically, fear imprints fast. When a frightening narrative is paired with a rule, don't go alone, share food, honor guests, the emotional jolt deepens recall. Modern research on memory formation and the amygdala echoes what storytellers intuited millennia ago. Scare someone, and they remember. Communities used that neurological shortcut to transmit values across generations. Before there were books, screens, or even written laws, there was a circle of firelight and a voice. Early humans told stories to make sense of a world that could kill them without warning. Storms, predators, rival clans, disease, a tale that explained where not to wander after dusk might save a child's life. A myth that gave a face to the darkness, a hungry spirit, a shape in the trees, helped people remember danger. Fear was memory's glue. In oral cultures, repetition was survival. A story had to be sticky, rhythmic, shocking, or grotesque enough that listeners would pass it on accurately. That's why so many early folk motifs are vivid and violent. Bones in the forest, eyes that glow, mouths full of needles. These weren't random horrors, they were mnemonic spikes. Ancient myths also acted as maps of the unknown. When lightning struck fields, gods were blamed. When disease spread, a curse was named. By giving catastrophe a personality, a thunderer, a plague demon, a restless dead, communities could bargain with terror. Rituals followed, behavior changed. Myth translated chaos into something you could propitiate. Across cultures, we see similar survival themes wearing different masks. In Arctic regions, cautionary water spirit stories warned children away from thin ice. In desert societies, jinn and sand spirits kept the young from wandering into heat and exposure. In dense European forests, wolves, witches, and woodcutters drew the perimeter between safety and oblivion. Change the landscape, and the monster changes shape, but the lesson remains: heed the boundary. As centuries passed and societies grew more complex, these early danger signals didn't vanish. They accumulated layers: religion, politics, morality. That layering is where folklore becomes especially dark and especially useful. If you're enjoying this journey into darkness, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell, because Part 2 will take us into even more chilling territory. Until then, keep your lights low, your doors locked, and remember, every story was born from a fear that once walked among us.